All right, all right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. This is a first for the PAC. So this month, as we know, it's Black History Month. And during this month, we all know we celebrate the contributions that African Americans have made to our country. And we usually spend time talking about, different topics that affect the Black community and the community as a whole. All of us know that nationally, policing has been on the center stage. However, when we discuss police and community relations, we have to acknowledge that just like our city and our nation is a melting pot, so is the police force. So tonight, we would like to speak to African-American members of law enforcement to get their perspective on policing, why they chose a career in law enforcement, and learn a little bit about them personally. So this evening we have so many esteemed panelists who have graciously offered a little bit of their time to share with us this evening. However, before I go ahead and introduce our panel, I'm just going to acknowledge the PAC staff that is on the call. So starting with our executive director, Anthony Irachi. Anthony? Okay, next, I'm just going on who I can see. We have Daniel Guy. We have tonight's co-moderator, Julian Jordan, who is our new Community Outreach and Constituent Services Specialist. I see our senior investigator, Eric Hill. There's Eric. Let's see. Who am I missing?
I see Janine and Stacy and Tim and Josh on the call as well.
Okay. Tim, Stacy, yes. Janine and Josh here. There's Tim waving. Okay. So with us this evening, we have a really, really great group. We have representation from many areas of the police force and law enforcement who are here to join us to have this exciting discussion. So first, we have Philadelphia Police Commissioner Danielle Outlaw. Is Commissioner Outlaw. This is Black history in the making. Commissioner Outlaw is the first Black woman to lead the police department, and that is an accomplishment that is very inspiring for many young people that cannot be overlooked. So thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Good evening.
Good evening. Yes. Next, we have former Deputy Commissioner Charlotte Council. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening.
We have former ATF Director and President of the Philadelphia chapter of Noble, Nathaniel Jones. Welcome.
Glad to be here.
We have Staff Inspector Deborah Francis, the Vice President of the Philadelphia chapter of Noble.
Hi.
Hi there, welcome. We have Police Captain Colleen Billups. Welcome.
Hi, everyone.
We have Police Lieutenant Walter Burks. Good evening.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi there. We have Police Sergeant Brian Younger. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
We have Corporal Christina Linder. Welcome.
There we go.
Hello.
Hi there. We have Officer Kimberly Hickinson. Good evening.
Sorry, trying to find to unmute her. That is my fault. Here we go.
Good evening.
Good evening. I don't see our next panelist here with us, so I will go ahead and finally we have Officer Frank Holmes with us. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone.
So before I turn things over to the co-moderator, Julian, to kind of get us started with our discussion, I think we should do a little bit of an icebreaker. So it's right at the end of the workday for many of us. I am still here, but it's fun. It's nice to unwind a little bit. So let's do a little bit of an icebreaker. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask each of our panelists to just take 10 to 20 seconds to tell us about a very interesting and fun app that you have on your phone, something that somebody else may want to utilize. So I will go ahead and go first. I'm going to pick an app that has saved my life in many, many occasions, and it is, see if you can see it. All right, it's taking a while. It's DoorDash. DoorDash is a lifesaver for me. DoorDash cooks for my children probably more than I do right about now. And so we are all indebted to whoever created this wonderful app that brings us delicious food. It's something that I can go and just grab something and pick it up. Or if I want to spend $20 in delivery for like an $8 item, DoorDash is there. So that's the app that I would pick. Okay, so Commissioner Outlaw, do you have any apps on your phone that help you get through the day?
I have plenty of apps, but I will tell you, just to be brief, I have the Calm app. I know a lot of people have the Calm app, and they may use it for, soundscapes in the background or whatever, but I like to use it for the sleep stories. And what's crazy about it is that I'll start the story, but I'm asleep before it finishes, so I can't even tell you what the stories are about. So they must work. So that is something that works, between the Pray.com app and the Calm app. I think these are two lifesavers that get me through on a regular basis.
Very nice, thank you. Former Deputy Commissioner Council, do you have an app on your phone you'd like to tell us about?
Well, being a retiree, I like to play games. So one of my favorite games is Cookie Jam.
Okay.
And I'm kind of stuck on it every single day. So I'm up to level 4,000 and something. So
okay, wow.
So that's my kind of fun thing I like to do.
Okay, sounds good.
Mhm.
Mr. Jones, tell us about the app that kind of gets you through your day.
Uber.
That's a good one too. Okay. All right, Staff Inspector Francis.
Pandora.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. But do you have Pandora Premium? That's where you get to skip around as much as you want. And
listen, I just learned how to get Pandora. You're trying to make it hard for me.
Nice. Captain Billups.
So I just got this gift, I guess it was a promotion, Christmas, Valentine gift, whatever. This Ember mug that I had my eye on for like, I don't know, 6 months.
Okay.
And it keeps your coffee at like the perfect temperature, like whatever it is. I think my temperature is like 126. So when I have my coffee in the morning, I feel luxurious. Like, oh my God, I got my expensive mug and my coffee's at the perfect temperature all day.
Nice. Okay, Lieutenant Burks, tell us about an app.
All right, I just got a Peloton bike and a Peloton treadmill to kind of get back in shape after all this COVID stuff. So I got my Peloton app on my phone and it keeps me engaged. I get to monitor my workouts and it keeps me excited. So I'm excited about the app and hopefully it's going to be life-changing for me as well. So that's my app.
Sounds good. Sergeant Younger.
The app I use, well, that's on my phone that I find interesting is the health app. Sometimes throughout the day when they're getting worked up, my watch kick in and tell me to breathe. I go through this breathing exercise that actually helps me calm down and stay focused. So the health app is pretty much, and it tells me to get up and walk around and do various things. So that right there is something I stay focused to on my phone.
Great, sounds good. Corporal Linder.
The actual app that I like is called a fitness app, and they only give you like a routine for 30 minutes. So if
Okay.
I find myself sitting too long, I go and knock it out real quick and then get back in the gear again. So
Nice. Officer Hickinson.
Hi, the app that I like is Hopper, with making travel plans.
Hmm.
What it does is keep track of basically the price of airline flights. So you
Okay.
put in your travel dates, and after you put in your travel dates, it'll let you know when's the best time to buy after a certain time when the prices go up. So it keeps you basically fairly even when you want to buy flights. So that's why I like that app.
Great. Okay, and another one of our panelists, Officer Kenyatta Davies.
Hi, everyone.
Hi there.
How you doing? Sorry I'm late.
Worries.
It's okay.
So I'm lost. So what are we? I'm
Oh,
here.
I'm sorry. Okay, so we were just
Hi.
all sort of, welcome, good evening. Thank you for joining us. We were just sharing one interesting app that we have on our phone, just to kind of break the ice amongst the group. So is there anything that you have on your phone that you use every day, or something fun that?
I don't know about fun, but I needed the app today, my Bible app. I needed it today. Today was one of those days that I said, you know what? I'm gonna need a little Jesus in my life. So a lot of stuff going on in my family. So I was like, that got me through my day.
Okay, sounds like a good one. And finally, Officer Holmes.
Yes, I think the app that I use the most is the Reddit app.
Oh,
I can find out anything on the Reddit app. I'm a big crypto fan. I can check on my crypto. I can check on neighborhood beefs. I can check on everything on the Reddit app. I mean, it's just everything. So that's probably my favorite.
Okay, I think that's everybody. I am now going to turn it over to Julian, who's going to get our panel discussion started. Julian, take it away.
Just real quickly, sorry, Julian, to interrupt. If anyone has questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. If we have time at the end, we'll definitely try to ask some from the rest of the audience. Sorry.
No worries. So to start off the question portion of the event, we're going to start with Commissioner Outlaw. And so we have two questions for you. The first one is, many of us people of color, we know that, you have to sit down with your children and have the talk, right? As people of color, a lot of times dealing with law enforcement can be different than other groups of people. And so as a parent, and also as, someone who has built a career in law enforcement, we're kind of curious as to how you've had that talk with your children and, what advice you have for others that maybe need to have that talk with their children.
Okay, so we didn't start with like a soft toss. I see that. No, but it's all good. This is an important question. And one, I just want to acknowledge all the panelists, tonight. We all have different lived experiences, and regardless of rank, we all have stories to tell. So I just wanted to say thank you for inviting me to be amongst so many distinguished people that I even met before I arrived here in Philadelphia. You guys mean a lot to me. And it's an honor to be able to share private and personal information amongst such distinguished people. I wanted to put that out there. I will share with you, I don't think it's been any secret, I talk about my boys often. And now that they're 23 and almost 21, the conversations evolve. We call it the talk, but it's still a discussion that's had regardless of when they're little boys, which is when it happened for me. And then the conversation changes again when it's time to get driver's licenses. It changes again as they're out on their own, out and about in the world. And really what it entailed was, and then I'd also say the conversation evolved when George Floyd was murdered. And then I had a conversation with my youngest that I hadn't had with my oldest, or that I'd already had with my oldest, but my youngest was at an age now where it finally clicked in his head, being a college student and being more exposed and out on his own, that people were afraid of him just because of what he looked like, and having to explain to him that bias exists, that, you know, as long as that fear and misperceptions and misinformation, all that stuff exists, we might have to move a little bit different, right? So again, the conversation evolves as they get older. But it's important to have, just because, you know, there's over 18,000 police departments in this country. And while some of us are a lot more forward thinking and, you know, than others, some, you know, we all work under the umbrella of the Constitution. Obviously, you know, we are working to uphold an oath to which we swore we would protect. But laws are different and they vary state by state. So I say all of that to say, as our young children, you know, we can only keep them under our wing for so long as they go out into the world. And if we do our jobs right, and they do what they're supposed to do, which is go out on their own and explore, they need to know that depending on where you are, where your hometown was or where your home state was might be different. And as they want to get in a car and drive across the country, look, some vehicle codes are different in different states, but regardless, you don't know who you're going to encounter. And no, everyone doesn't know your parents. So no, you can't drop names or do whatever. So you have to know why police officers ask to see your hands, and know that you have to, you know, be cognizant of name and badge number or serial number, your surroundings, your environment, that it's not illegal to record, but there's a time and a place, right? So just having these conversations on a regular basis, so much so that it's not okay, let me build up some courage to sit down and talk with my young people or my children about what's going on in the world. If you have these conversations on a regular basis, it becomes regular dinner table talk. So I know we call it the talk, but I just think the way, you know, our society has evolved and what we've seen, our interactions, how they've changed, and maybe not so much changed depending on where you are, having these conversations up front, being open and honest with your young people. I happen to have 2 African-American sons, but I would just say in general, you know, if you live in a neighborhood where you drive a nice car and somebody may think that you shouldn't be driving this car, you know, have conversation around that, have true and honest conversations around bias.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think that's a really good point, that it's an evolving conversation. It's not a one-time thing. And, you know, that conversation changes over time. And I experienced that with my own mother. We still have those conversations today. So thank you for sharing that. I know I started you off with a fastball, and I'm sorry.
That's all good.
I'll give you a lob toss on the second one. The next question that we have for you is, if you hadn't chose a career in law enforcement, what do you think that the career that you would have chosen would have been, and why?
I used to think that I was going to be a social psychologist, and then I went this route. And I would say it's the same, depending on how you look at it. But all of that to say, I would either be the Libra in me, would draw me towards being an interior designer of some sort. I'm big into the arts, visuals, and connecting visually. But then also, and I think this is still my goal to do this when retirement ever comes, to identify whether I'm owning or running, preferably owning, care homes for seniors that don't have the ability to live on their own anymore, but still need to be in a safe environment that is like, you know, what they're used to their entire life. And it's because I lost my mom about 6 years ago. She worked her entire life. I'm her only child. And I found very quickly that as her health deteriorated and she still wanted to be very independent, you had to be either really rich or really poor in order to qualify for services or to live somewhere, you know, in an environment where she was used to living, because she worked her entire life. But because she wasn't at the poverty level, she didn't qualify to get housing in some of the, you know, nicer areas that was subsidized. And because she wasn't rich and didn't have, you know, all this retirement to cash out and put $425,000 down and still pay $4,500 a month, we found ourselves in the squeeze. And so I want to make sure that, you know, a lot of people like myself don't have to experience that same level of stress as caregivers when caring for loved ones that are aging.
Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
And also, as a side note, I'm also a Libra, so go Libras.
So you get it. You get
Yes, I do. Thank you for sharing, Commissioner Outlaw. We're going to move on to retired Deputy Commissioner Counsel. The first question that we have for you is, what was your inspiration in initially choosing to start a career in law enforcement?
Well, I'm going way back until 1981. And ironically, I'm an educator by trade. So actually, when I graduated from college and I was doing a lot of substitute teaching, they weren't hiring permanently. So it wasn't that I was so anxious to become a police officer, but then interestingly enough, I took the tests and I entered the academy. And that's when I really became inspired, because just actually learning about laws, learning about working with the community, learning about the camaraderie and the unity, and actually wanting to, like I said, working with the community, I began to open my eyes and actually enjoy what I was seeing through the community. So as I went through the academy, I learned so much from the academy, and then I was able to go out into the field, and that even expanded my horizons even further. And the ironic thing, when I had about 9 years on the job, I was offered a permanent job with the Philadelphia School District, and I actually turned it down because I actually enjoyed what I was doing, and I found more fulfilling at this point, since I was working with the community. I can utilize my skills both in the police department also, because I was actually in the training bureau for about 10 years. So I was able to teach there. So I actually had both the best worlds. So that was my inspiration, and I ended up staying for 32 years. And so, I enjoyed it. And I actually also found out there was a wealth of different things, because people look at the police department and look at just being in patrol, but it's more than patrol. It is reaching out to the community, is other units within there, because at the time, I don't know if they still had that number of units. There were over 70 units within the police department. So it was a lot to learn about law enforcement and policing, and not only working with the police officers themselves, but once again, establishing the rapport with the community and working with different programs with the community and trying to keep that rapport going with community. So that was very inspirational for me during that period of time.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Next up, we have retired ATF Director Nathaniel Jones. Our first question for you also is, what was your inspiration for choosing a career in law enforcement?
It's not that complicated with me. My uncle, cousin, we call Black in the family, older cousins, uncles, was a police officer in NYC, New York City Police Department. And I thought it was so cool. Everything he did, every car he drove, everything he wore was kind of like Shaft.
Okay.
Like I said, it's a simple thing. And I'm like, you know what? I want some of that. And as I kind of like learned more, I found the good that he did. And that's what I base it upon. It's all about doing good. Long story short, is that when people see us, me, federal agents, maybe it's the worst day of their lives. I've always said that. If I can make it a little less worse, that's what I did.
Thank you. Next up, we have Staff Inspector Francis, or Mrs. Francis. She's not in uniform today, excuse me. So my question for you is, what do you love the most about your job?
What I love the most about my job is connecting with people and being able to share my experiences, help guide individuals in the internal community on things that I encountered that may have been difficult and try to pave the way so that they don't have to go through those things to make it easier. But then in the external, out in the community, I love being involved in the community. Just when I was, one of the best ranks that I had was a captain's rank. Colleen is the best rank. So when I was out in, as a captain, I was able to go and connect with the community, talk about the different things that they needed to know. And the reason being because I came from a community. My walk hasn't always been that easy inside, but when I was able to share some stories, because when they look at police, they kind of look at us like we are a separate entity that we just got created just for policing, but that wasn't my story. My father, I'm a second generation, was a police officer, and he took the job because he had to provide for his family. But I'm also a person who had lost a family member to being shot by a Philadelphia police officer. He was unarmed, driving his own car. It was a situation where it turned my father a little bit sour about the police department. But in his conversations with me, just by seeing how he was able to communicate with people, how I was able to communicate with people, inspired me. And so that is my motivating factor of being what I do. And that keeps me motivated to keep sharing stories, keep being real with real conversations, and not just saying conversation, but actually being real in the moments.
Absolutely. Thank you. Captain Billups, also the same question. What do you love the most about your job?
For me, what I love the most is the busyness of it. So I was talking this over earlier, and you know, to put it in one word, it's the excitement of it. It changes every day. I never know what to expect. Last week, you know, even in this position of, I've only been here for 2 months, I've handled a multitude of things, very different things. The tragic fatal fire, some other crime issues, missing children, just different things, keeps me busy, keeps me on my toes for sure. And also the connections that I have with the officers in my district. I always say I have the most fun in patrol assignments. The officers are driven, they're motivated, and they always seem to be so helpful. So I just enjoy it.
It definitely helps when you know that the people you're working with have your back and are driven and, you know, passionate about what it is that you're doing.
Absolutely.
I fully agree. Next up, we have Lieutenant Burks. Question for you is, in many communities of color, the issue of mental health is still pretty much a taboo subject. And so what are some of the challenges that exist for police when interacting with individuals that may have mental health issues?
I believe that one of the major problems is just knowing how to deal with those individuals. I think it's what we're doing right now with training our officers and crisis intervention training, giving them the tools and the skills necessary to know how to de-escalate some of these situations. I was out there in patrol. I've patrolled many districts, been in many units where I was out there with folks, and I've seen, you know, it's one thing to have this mental illness, and you know, you got schizophrenia, bipolar, depression, but then you got mental illness that's induced by narcotic intoxication, and those are two totally different things there. And I would say 90% of the time was met with aggression when I encountered somebody that mental state was altered due to narcotic intoxication. So it's a very different ball game there. And I think what we're doing is we're doing the best we can to train our officers to make sure that they have the tools and the skills necessary to go out there and know how to interact when they come in contact with somebody like this, because there's a flip side to it, right? We see on the news, things escalate. And when things escalate, everyone has an opinion, pretty much don't know the entire story. The officers feel like they're being, you know, targeted. They feel like they can't do their jobs, properly. Feel like everyone has an opinion. And I think it brings forth the need of a bigger conversation, because there's always two sides to a story. But I believe right now what we have to do is we just have to keep on training our officers to know how to deal with individuals in an altered mental state, no matter what type of individual it is or what type of situation it is. We just have to know how to deal with those folks and try our best to de-escalate the situation as best as we can. So training is key. And I'm not just saying that because I work in the training bureau, but I just believe that training is key. And the best way, the best tool we can give our officers right now is training. So.
Absolutely, I agree with you. The more knowledge you have and the more tools you have to be able to tackle a situation, the better off you're going to be and everyone involved is going to be. Thank you. Sergeant Younger, what advice do you have for people of color that aspire to a career in law enforcement?
The advice I have is pretty much pursue your dream. For a young person out there right now, law enforcement is not a popular profession to be in. So the advice that I would give is find out who the officers are in your community, reach out to them and get to know those officers. Not every officer is out to throw someone in jail, in prison, or just treat them badly. There are a lot of officers that are out there waiting to mentor. And that's what it's about, is mentor, communicating, and providing that opportunity for the next generation. And just for example, today, one thing that made my day today is as I was leaving the district, a young African-American male was walking down the street coming from school. And he actually spoke to me first and held a conversation with me. I was lost for words because I was shocked that, one, he actually spoke to me in a positive manner, and two, actually engaged in the conversation with me. So my advice was to him is continue to, stay in school, stay positive, and all the negative things that's going on around you, don't let that distract you from getting to where you want to be in life. And he appreciated that. He thanked me, he walked away. And that made my day today. But that would be the same advice I would give to anyone. You see the officers day in and day out in your community. If you have the opportunity, speak to them, talk to them. You can separate those officers that have a passion for what they do, opposed to those that are just there collecting a paycheck. It's a big difference. They have that passion, they will actually engage anyone in the community and provide the resources and advice that they need to be successful and help the communities out in the neighborhoods.
Absolutely. Sometimes all it takes is a positive experience with someone, doing something to realize, wow, that can be me one day, or this is something that I really want to get into. It's a great point.
Sergeant Younger, I just want to follow up with the quick question,
Yes.
because this is something I found when you talk to young people and you tell me what your perspective is. How important is it to be authentic with young people? Because I feel like, teenagers, kids, they can smell it a mile away when adults are just saying whatever it is they need to say. So when we're dealing with young people, how important is it to just give them the real facts, and talk to them on their level, where they can really understand where you're coming from?
That's what it's about, being authentic, because they can, like you said, they can pick that up if you're being genuine or if you're just trying to pull their leg, right? So you have to tell them how it is, what to expect. And if they ask questions about law enforcement, you have to be straightforward with them. They see you in the community more, you may not know that they're watching you. So if they ask you a question, you're trying to say, I help out the community, but, days prior, they saw you, throwing someone up against the wall and putting your hands on them when you shouldn't have been, they pick that up, and that's where you lose them. Once they get that, lack of trust in you, they look at every officer in that community the same way. So you have to be straightforward with anyone, if it's the young adults to even adults. You have to be genuine. You have to, give them the straight answer, whether they want to hear it or not. You have to be genuine with them. So that's very important, to be straight up front and let them know this is why things the way they are. This is where we're trying to get the community and law enforcement in the future, and we need help from everyone. We can't pull their leg because they're smarter than we think they are.
Mm.
Absolutely. Corporal Linder, do you believe that the community can do a better job to mend the relationship with the police department? And if so, what do you think the community can do to better mend that relationship?
So in the aspect of mending the relationship, it's a two-way street. In order for the community to mend the relationship, we have to be open to hear the pain and the hurt that the community is going through. So in order for us to get past that, we have to set up a time where community can come out and say why they feel the way they feel, why they don't like the police, what experiences have they had. And until we get past that point where we're able to listen and actually hear, and then on the police side, they have to hear our side, why we may feel the way we feel and we encounter the people the way we encounter. Once we have that type of setup, then we can focus on the concerns or the issues that is keeping us apart. And until we actually have that, we're going to always be apart. And they have to see we're all the same. We just work in law enforcement. They work in other fields. But because of that disconnect and not being able to hear and listen, we're going to always be apart. Just like when we were going through all the riots and we were seeing all the hate and things coming out. The country was hurting. The city was hurting. And if there was an opportunity for people to get there, so people just to listen. And the listen phase is not going to just happen overnight. It's going to be over a period of time. And then we come back, and as we're writing things down, take those issues and then try to address them little by little. It's good to have the police involved with the children, because that's what we do. We love the children, but we have to look at the community as a whole. And then, even like we're having this forum here, which is perfect, but do we have the key people we need to have in here that need to hear this, or that need to have that vibration? I remember I worked in the 19th. We did a forum one time. We were at a school with kids. We did reverse roles. They were the police officers, we were them. We act like them when the police would approach them, and they got to see it different. But the only thing I think we were lacking, it wasn't the people we need to have in that meeting to have the real dialogue to move forward.
So going off of that, who do you think those people are? Like, who are the people on both sides that you think are the key people to have to really change, that relationship on both sides?
So the police as a whole is part of that key. Yeah. You have your community members that trust the police, and they're going to be there, but we have to pull those in that don't trust the police. We have to get to that element that is causing it not to be a good element in that neighborhood or that community. And it's hard. I'm saying it. I wish I actually could go out here and come up with a tool to say, look, I need you to be here because we have to get that discussion. But because of those walls that's built up, I don't like the police. I'm not dealing with the police. I feel some type of way because the police officer took a friend's life, whatever it may be. Or I don't like the fact that police officers is out here doing their job. They don't see it doing their job. I'm always feel like I'm being harassed. But we have to get that core and it's a small amount, that core that has to be addressed to start us mending those bridges.
Absolutely, I agree with you. Thank you. Officer Hickinson, pretend you are a recruiter for the police department. In your opinion, what does it take to be a good police officer?
My opinion in being a good police officer is I think you have to be authentic. When you're not authentic, I think people kind of notice that, they pick up on it. And then when you're not consistent, they think you're disingenuous and you lose them. I think a lot of the practices that we do, we lose a lot of people along the way because there's so much, I'm gonna say, protocol that goes along with it, that you're not able to keep people engaged in the things that you want them to be engaged in. So I just think that if you're going to be an effective communicator and recruiter for the police department, you have to actually be yourself. For the most part, people put on facades about what they think other people want them to see. And when I'm gonna say the community notices that, they don't want no parts of it. So that's my answer.
To take that a little bit further, do you think it's difficult with, some of the, the expectations that are on you, or some of the procedures that you have to go through to maintain, being genuine while on the job, while also, doing the best job that you can, and following all of those rules and statutes and expectations that are put upon you?
It's not about the rules and statutes. Like, we have police policy, like there are rules in terms of like state policy that you have to follow. I don't even think that that's what makes it hard. I think because the police department operates the way that it does, it's more bureaucratic than anything. I'm gonna say there is a youth engagement group that there are officers a part of. And one of the conversations that we had were about recruitment in terms of getting the kids engaged in the neighborhood. The process was they would fill out an application, which they send in online. Then after they send it in online, there are some protocols that the police department has to do. But in the meantime, what happens to that interest that you generated? Mm-hmm. So you are losing people in just the paperwork part of it. So I think that's a fair way to answer that question.
Absolutely. Thank you. Officer Davies, imagine you have the biggest budget and unlimited staff and resources, and you can create a new unit within the department. What would that unit look like, and what would it be?
The unit would be, let's see. So it will be a same department. However, it will have more opportunities for officers to, where they have the skill to do certain things. Say like I'm gonna say a school beat, and I love kids. It's a lot of officers. I'm gonna say myself. I've been on last out for many, many years, 16 years, and I love kids. So I felt like it was never probably an opportunity for me to go and, do things with the kids. Like, it was never really told to me to say, you know what, I want you to engage in helping kids, because that's what we need. We need officers so they can know we're human. I'm a mom, I'm an aunt, I'm a sister. I've been there before. I went to West Philly High. Like, this is something that was my passion to help. So when I started being a school beat, I really was like really getting to these kids, and they really didn't understand why I was at their school every day. Why I was like, what are you doing here? They didn't understand it. Like, I was here to help them, and they really didn't understand it. So the engagement, I will make something totally really big for, we can have something like, I love Powell, Officer Holmes is in Powell and they love him. I wish for us to build something even bigger for kids to go to after school, to have more basketball teams, things that we can engage with more kids so we can get them off the street. So if I would do a department, it will probably be something bigger for Powell in different areas, because I've been in South Philly for a long time, and certain people can't come up to the West End. So Powell is located in the West End of the district. So if you're further down north side of the district, you're not allowed, because of, everyone know that's not a part of your town. So we need an area for them, those people, to hang out and be in Powell. So that what I think I will build something on that and try to give back to these kids and help these kids and get more officers involved in engaging with kids, because they really love it. And I feel like there's a lot of officers out there that will love to, spend days with kids and help kids engage with them each and every day. So that's what I will do as far as that engaging. And I think that will draw people for the community to be involved more with the police officer and interact with the police officers a little bit better. So that's why I will put my money in.
Thank you. The last of the first round of questions is for Officer Holmes. What are your thoughts on civilian oversight, and how can organizations like PAC and CPOC improve transparency and accountability with the police force?
Transparency is a big part of public trust. So I don't really know too much about those organizations, only because I've been in PAL for so long, it seems like forever. But I do know, speaking on transparency, that we need a bunch more transparency within law enforcement in general. Now, which organizations did you speak of?
I was talking about the Police Advisory Commission and the new organization that we're turning into CPOC.
Okay, and what the CPOC mean? I do know what I'm familiar
Citizens
with
Police Oversight Commission.
Okay, I'm not too familiar with that one, but I am familiar with PDAC. And when I was in the 17th district and our PDAC unit was there, we did have a very, very strong PDAC organization, and we did work well. They did work well with the police. I believe that it has to be a partnership to reach the community. I always said, as a police officer, you have to know the people you police. Knowing the people you police makes a big difference. It builds trust, and also it builds like a sort of love. Like I've been down here for 21 years, I believe it is, and people know I've raised like 3 generations of kids down here. And one thing that I can say is that when people see me on the street, it's a genuine love. They know I care for them, and I care for the people that we are policing. So with the police and PDAC, and just like I said, I'm not too familiar with the other organization. I've been in PAL for so long, I've been out of touch with things. So I believe that transparency is the biggest thing, and working with a partnership within the PDAC and the police would help.
Going off of that, do you think it's important? Like you said, you've been in that space for over 20 years. Do you think it's important to actually put that time in and have people see you there constantly and have people understand how you work and how you are active in the community to really be able to build that trust and that relationship over a course of time?
I'm sorry for cutting you off. Most definitely. My biggest thing in policing was getting to know people. I got out of the car. I walked around. I spoke to people. I spoke to the people that didn't want to speak to me. And I know they didn't want to speak to me because some people just have that mindset that police are bad from the door. And, people that I've arrested, I'll go up to them and I'll speak to them and engage them. You know what I mean? You have to know the people. But I think the biggest thing is getting out. I used to get out and walk around all the time. Just park my car, do a park and walk. A lot of times when we have details, we used to have details at the rec centers and things of that nature. A lot of people just sit in the car the entire tour during their detail. And I was one of the guys. I can't sit in the car. I just got to get out and I just got to engage people. And I think that's the biggest thing: engaging people and creating a trust issue. That has a lot to do with positive policing and positive community relations.
So Officer Holmes, you mentioned, PDACs and just getting the community to be a little bit more involved. And This is for you, but just for anyone else that may want to answer, just to follow up. I say it all the time. I don't know anybody that does not have an opinion about policing or how the police do their job. But sometimes when it comes time to have a call to action, or there's a community meeting, or there's something that you need people to become involved in, maybe there's not a lot of participation. So what do you think are some ways you can really move people from just talking about change and talking about, becoming more involved with their PDAC or with Police Advisory Commission? How do we get them to move from talking to actually putting some things in action?
You have to know who are the talkers and who are the movers. That's basically it. Just like I said, I know people down here. I know who to go to when I need things done. You know what I mean? I know I work at PAL right now. I know my parents who are very engaged. I know the parents who are not engaged. So you have to know the community. That's why I said you have to know who you police. And, you know what I mean? It makes our job much easier just to know people. So, you know, you have to know what tools, what people to use for what tools. If I need a parent to go to a school and talk, I know what parent to go to and who to talk to. So that's the big thing. You got to know who you policing.
Okay. Officer Hickinson, I see your hand is raised.
I'm going to say a lot of the officers that I see that's a part of the panel were a part of the 17th district at some point. The 17th district in and of itself is, I'm going to say, a very unique district. And what Officer Holmes said is 100% true. If you don't know who the players are in terms of who your community leaders are, who your community liaisons are, who your troublemakers are, like if you don't know who you are policing and who does what and how they fit into the grand scheme of things, it doesn't work. You will never get anybody to come out. Anytime that we have ever done an event, I'm going to say that's where I'm the community relations officer of the 17th. I became the community relations officer under now Staff Inspector Francis. I was just like a couple of people on here, just a regular officer. And when you get a supervisor that kind of sees what you can do or what your potential is to do, you get your chance to kind of shine in this police department. So working with the community members, you get to know, like, again, who does what voices can be used, what voices that you may have to tell stand down, depending on the situation. You just have to be involved. If you're not involved, then these calls to actions are actually useless. It's just putting something on paper to say, I did something.
It's a great answer, great answer. Sergeant Younger, I saw your hand was raised.
Inspector Francis actually messaged me first to get unmuted if we want her to talk first.
That's okay. So yes, the 17th district is a unique area to patrol. I was the captain in the 17th district, and I found that, you know, you get people who don't want to come out to your community meetings, but they have concerns in their community. And that was a problem that I did encounter. So what I would do is I went out into the community. So if I had set you know, when you go to a block and you know it's people out there, I will go and I will sit on somebody's stoop and have a conversation. Now I'm the captain in uniform. And so now everybody wants to know why the captain is out there, you know, talking to this person. So now they want to gather around. That's how I get their attention. And that's how I got their attention. So when I had a concern that I needed to address, I would address it there. So they didn't come to my meeting. I came to their block and I made my block their meeting. And then they had to engage. And you always will get people in the community who will complain. But then you take that person and you make that person now somebody involved in your district community to resolve that issue. Now you gave them a purpose. So now they understand from a police perspective, it's not as always easy as they believe it to be, but now they got a purpose to help their community. So when you go out into the community, when they don't want to come to your meeting, because no, they don't want to come into a district, and sometimes they don't want the bickering, because we did have a lot of problems with that, where you got different fractions coming into your district. You have to know your area. The 17th was plagued with so many different neighborhood-based gangs that not everybody wanted to be in the same room, and you had to keep that in mind. So when you know these things and you respect what is going on in the community, you get the involvement and you can then start breaking down some of those barriers. I thought it was best to go and walk. Like some of my officers used to hate it. They'd be like, Captain, you're not supposed to walk around the district. Why not? I walked my entire district and everyone got to know me. So I became, that's my captain. even we had a block, which was the 1500 block of Corley Street, was known for a lot of gun violence, gang activity. So every morning they would be out there sitting on somebody else's stoop. So what did I do? I would walk down their block with my Dunkin' Donuts coffee, and then I would engage my drug dealers. And then when they kept seeing me, they were like, why is she here? But then they started having a conversation with me. And then you find like different interests. And then they started like cleaning up the block. I said, well, you know, I'm gonna keep coming because you got your block. Why does the block have to look like this? So once I started getting them engaged in conversation and being transparent as to who I was and why I was there, it changed the dynamic. My gun violence on that area diminished. So it didn't diminish. It got lower, and they made sure that when something actually occurred, I was getting the notification, or something that was getting ready to go down, I would get notification. And just like Frank Holmes became, the Powell came into the west end of the district, we had to try to navigate and see if we could get people from the east end up there, which I don't know that ever occurred. We never got the east end because they're so territorial.
Right.
So in order to know that, well, if I seen somebody on the east end, because I got to know my people, I got to have conversations, I knew that that person on the east end should not be coming up in the west end. And if he's coming up in the west end, I'm getting ready to have a shooting. So, and then I knew how to deploy. So, but that's because I got engaged. I got to know everyone. And then people started wanting to be my source of information. Yeah. So they didn't want me to tell who they were. So I would have my phone blowing up with sources of information saying, Captain, you might want to put some cars up here because it's getting ready to be a shooting. So I would get that information because they began to trust me. They began to see me as a member of their community that was there for them. So yes, we have to be out and about and be transparent and be real with people. Don't sit there and give them some BS answer. It's not going to go anywhere. We have to pull them in and make them be a part of our strategy. When I would have to do enforcement, I would go out to the areas and tell them, you get ready to get shut down because I need to have this area controlled. And now when you say shut down, that means parking in South Philly is a really tough thing. So you tell them you're going to enforce if you park 15 feet from the corner, people are like, dang, man, I just lost the parking spot. Or, you put your trash out too early, I'm coming out there right near CVN. So once they knew that, then they started controlling their environment. Listen, y'all ain't gonna bring that up in here because we don't want the police activity. We don't want all of this going on. I don't want a ticket because I put my trash out an hour early. I need to park my car here. So these are the things that you have to pull people in, work together, be transparent, and be out in front. You can't be doing it behind your desk. You gotta be out in front. And sometimes just knowing the area, just put yourself in it and let them know that you're there, bring your police officers in it. And sometimes when we are the higher up we go in the rank, because I was a captain, I walk by myself. I didn't want my police officers walking with me because then it looks like I'm bringing an entourage into the neighborhood. No.
Yes.
At one time I walked out and they thought I was on punishment. It was like, what you do? I was like, no, I'm the captain. I didn't do anything. They said, no white shirts don't walk the beat. I said, no, well, this white shirt walks the beat. If my officers can walk the beat, I can walk the beat. And that's what I did.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Can we just give Commissioner Outlaw a moment to, say goodbye? She has to go, but just on behalf of everyone on the call, thank you for coming. We really appreciated your input, and please, you have the floor.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, great. Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you. When they asked me to come, I was like, I would love to be an active listener and really hear the perspectives of everyone involved. I mean, I get to share my story a lot, but I think the takeaway from this is that we've all been through some stuff. We're going to continue to go through some stuff. There's roadblocks, there's obstacles, there's bottlenecks, there's challenges. But hopefully what everyone hears tonight are how we overcame. and how we will continue to overcome. And if not us, then who? Because if we don't continue to persevere through everything that we've had to accomplish in order to sit in these seats, we are not continuing to hold the door open as the door was held open for us. We all stand on the shoulder of giants. I know I'm preaching to the choir, but there's work to be done here. And so I've always said, get me now while I have the energy, right? Why are we here? Because we're passionate about the work that we do. We're passionate about our loved ones. We see ourselves in our communities. We see ourselves in the people that we come across. We see, I mean, even when I go to these call-ins and we speak into the worst of the worst of the worst, I tell them, you could be sitting at my dinner table. You look like you kinfolk, or you my child, or whatever it is, right? So we have a unique connection. We have unique lived experiences, but it doesn't mean that we have to choose being a cop or choose being the skin that we were born with. We were born this way, but we happen to be cops. So because of that, we bring a very unique perspective. And for so long, I noticed people try to say, are you this or are you that? We're not, it's an and. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with being both. We bring many perspectives. That's what makes us special. That's what makes us unique. That's why it's important to embrace diversity. So again, I appreciate being able to hear, to sit back for once and be an active listener. And really hear the input. There's some amazing people in this police department, and it's absolutely my honor to work with each and every one of you. So I just wanted to say that before I hopped off. But please keep doing you, keep doing what you do. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner.
Thank you.
I think Officer Holmes wanted to speak on that last subject before we move back onto the question.
Actually, I did. Trust is a big issue. Staff inspector also brought that up. And you basically covered what I was about to say. But trust is a big issue when dealing with the community also, because trust and anonymity, they want to stay anonymous at the same time, but they'll give you a lot of information as long as you don't give up their names. So if they trust you enough, they'll tell you anything that's going on in the neighborhood. I will say that. But as long as you don't get their name in it, everything is fine. So that's what I say. You have to know the people that you're dealing with. Once you know people, and they feel as though they can trust you, they'll let you know everything that's going on, which is a great deterrent for us. It's great. They can tell you things, and we can put things in motion to stop anything that's going to go on, or prevent things that could happen. You know what I mean? So that's what I wanted to say, but she had already covered it.
Also, before we move on, I think Sergeant Younger had something to say as well. I think you had your hand raised. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much the inspector and Frank Holmes covered. I was just going to vouch for Frank Holmes because I worked in it. I work in the 1st district, but I was assigned in a task force between the 1st, 17th, and the 3rd. And from Frank Holmes, a lot of information came to me, to us, where we prevented a lot of shootings, because he sent us information saying, hey, these kids were just here, they're going over to this location, and it's possibly going to be a shooting. And we showed up, and sure enough, the information that he relayed to us was information that was legit, that he got from his resources out there in the 17th district. So I know firsthand, working with Frank Holmes, and he was still in POW, but I was, in patrol. But that one takeaway I take from what he had mentioned is something I do today, and the inspector mentioned it as well, is, get out and walk your area. I get called out all the time. Why is the sergeant walking up 20th and Snyder? Why is the sergeant staying on Bonzo and Mifflin? Or why is he doing this and why is he doing that? And I'm just getting out, showing my face, letting the officers that work with me out there know that if I could walk, we could park our cars and walk and interact with the community. And as Frank Holmes said, you get a lot of information. I get, folks talking to me through the window saying, watch this car going down the street. This car does this, this car do that. Come back around this time. They won't give up their name and information, but they will give you information about the negative things that's going on in the neighborhoods.
Thank you for that. That was a really great question and a lot of great answers to support that. All really awesome points. The next question is coming back to former Deputy Commissioner Counsel. How important do you think it is to have minority representation in law enforcement and both rank and file and also in upper management?
It was a great segue from Police Commissioner Outlaw when she talked about diversity and the importance of diversity. It is extremely important. Because we want to be able to relate to our community. And if we go into certain communities and that don't look like you, they don't understand you, they don't know about your culture, there seems to be a problem, and that kind of breaks down the communication between officer and the community, because they look at that and say, well, you don't understand, you don't know what I've been through, how can you understand what I'm doing? And on the other side of the coin, you have officers that don't relate to the community member, people that live in the community. So it's extremely important that we do have diverse community. And I'm gonna give you a perfect example with me. When I was a police officer, I was in a police wagon and I was only minority at that particular point, and there was a mental health person. Well, they told me to sit in the patrol wagon. I sat in patrol wagon while they tried to get a mental health individual who was huge, a Black male individual, and to get him into the wagon. He would not step in that wagon, and they were surrounding him. I just happened to get out of the patrol wagon and walk around and ask him what's going on. As soon as he saw me, he stepped right in the wagon, and that diffused the whole situation. So community wants to see people that they can relate to, that they can trust, and understand what their needs are. So it's extremely important to have officers in those communities that do that. As far as the rank and file, it's also important that we have officers or rank and file that understand the officers' needs also. It was many a time where, as far as mentorship is concerned, there were no mentors. So we have that same, that same kind of problem also. Does an officer from a different culture understand where I'm coming from? Can they mentor me? Can they, provide the information to me? Because they are different. Do they understand me? Years ago in the police department, used to teach cultural diversity classes in the training bureau to kind of bridge that gap, so to speak. So we do understand each other. We do understand the needs. And not only we're talking about color and minorities, also gender differences. When I came out of the police academy, I was only female in my squad. I didn't have any females to look up to mentor me, to relate to. I had men, and fortunately for me, I did have the men that took me under their wing, but they were African-American men, and they showed me the rope and showed me, understood that I did have potential to go up in the ranks, and they actually mentored me. So it's very important that you have people that look like you, understand you, know your differences, and can actually, explain better, as far as law enforcement, how we relate to our community in general. So yes, it's definitely necessary.
Thank you. We're going to go back to retired ATF Director Nathaniel Jones. My question for you is, what do you think needs to be done to mend the relationship between the community and law enforcement, specifically communities of color?
Well, I'm at a little disadvantage because I'm not a Philadelphia native. So every city is going to be a little different. But what I have to say consistently in all the cities I've been in, Boston, Charlotte, Memphis, Philadelphia, there's always been a situation where it's us versus them. What you want to do, you want to bring that temperature down. Now, how you bring it down in Memphis is different from Charlotte, it's different from Boston, it's different from Philadelphia. But it's all about how to teach people how to deal with conflict. and conflict resolution. We're in a different place now. We got carjackings, we got shootings. It's tough. Philadelphia is particularly different and unique because when it comes to gun violence, and I can speak to that, it's not like a New York or a Boston where guns are coming from North Carolina or Florida. The guns are coming from Pennsylvania. Now, how do you address that? I don't have the full answer, but part of the answer is this. We got to get them at a young age. And we got to get them at a young age to recognize that going through your firearm is not a problem solver. Everybody's nodding their head. I get it, but it's a tough task.
It is.
It's a tough task.
Can I speak to that?
Yes, please.
In the incident of the gun violence and the gun, I've been thinking about this for some time. In our community, having the concept of a gun is a taboo. So because it's a taboo, our men, young men, gravitate to it. But if there is opportunity to teach them the proper mechanics of that weapon, that taboo will be taken away. And they'll learn it as if they were in a class of this gun. It takes a life. It comes down as a heart thing. And you're realizing what you're doing. But right now it's a taboo. And I have this weapon and this is my power. So I'm just going to shoot. And there's no connection to that bullet. There's no connection to that life you're taking. You're just trying to make a name for yourself if that's what it's about. But that taboo within the Black community for our young men needs to be removed. And it really should start, like he said, where it's young, but we have to take that taboo away and say, hey, yes, this is a gun. This is a gun. And this is what happens. They have to understand the mechanics of it. What happens, the whole process of it. So now it's not a taboo or anything. This is something that you can use. You know, the other people go, they hunting, they teaching them kids young, they in the woods, teaching them how to shoot, go hunting for deer and different things. We have to change that concept from it being a taboo and start educating our young men, young women in general, that this is no longer a taboo for us and having the right environment for it.
Absolutely. This next question, I think, is a very important question. And
Officer Burke wanted to.
Oh, please.
Well, I was just going to piggyback off of some of the things that were said, and I feel like right now, and I don't know if anyone else is feeling this, but I'm feeling it, and I'm feeling like we are operating in a time where it kind of almost feels like we're going backwards. And I've never seen so much racial tension in my lifetime. I mean, it's the first for me. I grew up in North Philadelphia all my life, and I know what it's like to be a Black man in Philadelphia. But what I'm experiencing right now, and not just in my personal life, but just what I'm seeing play out on social media, on national television, it seems like we're becoming more and more divided as a community, period, people. And one of the things I think for us as Black officers, it just brings forth the need for us to make sure that our community members know, again, back to that authenticity, back to that realness, just basically know that we're out here for them and that we're part of the community. I say all the time, police in the community is the same. We can't do the job of policing effectively if we don't have the community members on our side. It's point blank, it won't work. We need to go out. We need to, we talked about relationships. We talked about being present in the community. We talked about transparency and trust. And when it comes to young people, and when it comes to, us as leaders in the community, people that others may look up to, we can't hold back. It's time to get out there and do what we got to do. We can point fingers all day. We can speculate. We can give our opinions on why this happened or why it didn't happen. But I think the most part, the biggest thing for us to do is just go out here and just get these young people and do the best we can with trying to reach them and trying to communicate to them. Communication is key. Talk about bridging the gap with the community and policing. We got to talk. We got to have conversations. This conversation is great that we're having right now. It's a great conversation, but we need to educate the community, because there's a lot of things and a lot of opinions that come out when people just have a lack of, they don't understand why we do what we do. And if you take the time to sit those people down and talk and communicate and talk things out, they'll start to understand, okay, maybe that cop wasn't wrong in that situation. Maybe that cop, the cop resorting to his weapon instead of his taser was the best thing that he could have done in that particular moment, given the circumstances that were surrounding the situation. Oftentimes, people offer their opinions and don't know the full gravity of the situation because they're not as educated on what we do. And I believe that it's just time to start having meaningful conversations, uncomfortable conversations, because people don't like having uncomfortable conversations. They don't want to talk about race. But we're seeing right now that race is a thing. It's a big thing right now. But when you start saying it, people are like, oh, no. Nah, it's time to start having those conversations. It's time to start making people uncomfortable, because guess what? That's the only way we're going to work through this thing. We're talking about biases and implicit bias, and that's a new term. It's not a new term, but it's a term that I'm hearing a lot now, implicit bias. But oftentimes, when you start talking, when you start communicating, when you start learning cultures, learning why certain people do certain things, then you understand, maybe I did have a bias towards them. It was implicit. I didn't realize it, but I do. And it's education, it's communication, it's conversation. These things need to happen. People were born, hating certain people. They were raised that way. I wasn't raised that way, but you may work along somebody every single day that was raised that way. Now they do a good job of hiding it, but that's how they really feel. But it's until you start having those meaningful, uncomfortable conversations that people start to change their opinion in the way they think and the way they operate. So, until we start meeting people where they at, having conversations, meaningful conversations, uncomfortable conversations, I don't see many things changing. I mean, I really don't. We got to get out here. We got to reach the community, meet them where they at. Like Staff Inspector Francis said, don't expect them to come to you, because not all the time they're going to want to come to you. We talk about resources and rec centers and nonprofits. What good is a nonprofit if you got 10 members in there? What good is it? Seriously. Right. I mean, you have to get people in these seats. You have to fill these places up. And authenticity, keeping it real, showing them that we're human. They think we're robots sometimes. They don't think cops should have personality. We shouldn't smile. We can't get silly a little bit. Yes, we can, because we're human. We're human beings. And when they start to see that, they get more comfortable. They get more comfortable with us, and they're willing to talk to us. So I hope to see more stuff like this and just more meaningful conversation with the community, because education is key, and they need to know why we do what we do so that they'll understand us a little better. That's all. I'm off my soapbox.
You said a lot of great things, but one point you mentioned, I just wanted to just follow up a little bit, because you talked about, educating the public on what police officers do, and specifically, talking to the youth, and you mentioned social media. And I'm just curious, do you feel that social media has contributed to showing the world what policing looks like, or do you think social media has sort of created this lane to kind of fan flames? Because you talked about racial tension and things like that. What are your thoughts?
I think it's a little bit of both, and the reason why I say that is because if it wasn't for cameras and social media, we wouldn't be witnessing some of the stuff that we witness. Make no mistake about it. We see things happening all across the nation, and we see cops operating in doing good, and we see cops doing bad, right? We see these things play out. Look at George Floyd, right? We seen Derek Chauvin with his knee on his neck for 9 minutes and some odd seconds, right? And if it wasn't for that camera, if it wasn't for social media, that wouldn't have been brought to light. So I'm not totally saying that I'm not against that at all, but I do think social media can fan the flames, because sometimes when you see things and people put out what they want to put out because they want to control the narrative, you have comments, you have people commenting, they don't know the full story. So if you see a comment and you already have a negative attitude towards the police, and you see someone that agrees with you in that moment, then it's going to be amplified now the way you're feeling, because someone saw a snippet of a larger situation or larger video, and they thought, hey, well, the cop was wrong in that situation. So now it's like, did you see what that cop did? That cop was wrong. That cop was wrong. But oftentimes, I'm not gonna say oftentimes, but it's when you do a full investigation and you get to the bottom of what transpired, you may realize that maybe that was the only option the officer had in that particular moment. Not every situation that we see on TV that was negative on the surface turned out to be a negative situation for the officer at the end of the day. So social media can be utilized for good and bad. And I think it's a purpose for it. I mean, I think we've become too reliant upon social media, but for me, I use social media for fun. And I believe that's what should be happening more on social media, fun. But, you know, it's good and bad, in my opinion.
Yeah, you make an excellent point. You know, I think social media has been good because it shows, you know, like you said, if there isn't any footage, you know, now people can really see, you know, some things that are going on. But I'm a huge hip hop person. You know, I don't know if you're familiar, other people are familiar with Kendrick Lamar, you know, but, you know, he had a line in this song that said, you know, it's funny, our camera footage isn't enough, you know, and I think sometimes for a lot of communities, especially communities of color, you know, it's a little bit disheartening when it seems like everybody sees what happened, there's footage of it, you know, and somehow, you know, the reaction isn't what people think it should be, you know, when you see clear cases or what the public thinks is a clear case. So I think, yeah, social media, it definitely is a double-edged sword a lot of times. There's a couple hands up. I think this is an interesting question.
I'll let Mr. Jones go first because his hand was up first.
I'll offer this to the panel and the visitors. Is that you're correct in your statement about participation education would help, but you got to understand what this thing is on. This thing is about fear. And when another person, black or white, whatever, they fear someone, they want to arm themselves. They want to arm themselves and they want to protect themselves. So this is just about fear and about young brothers, sisters being a little concerned about their own safety, about their own profit margin. That's another conversation. And that's what this whole thing is about. Conflict resolution, yeah, but it's about fear. All right, so we have to understand that it's not just about a person shooting at the person because they want to rob them. That happens. But a lot of it is like, I want to get you before you get me. That's what this thing is about. And I'm not that smart. But what I do know is that we can get to the core of it, the core, because, you know, we could lock people up from now to the end of time. Not going to solve the problem. You got to get to the core. And the core is fear. And the core is that I don't know you, you're on my block or whatever. I'm scared. I don't know what you want to do to me. I want to hurt you before you hurt me. Simple terms. In every city I've ever been in. Philadelphia is no different. I'm done.
Let's, we have two more hands raised. Let's, I believe Ms. Council was first, and then we'll go to Mr. Holmes.
Yeah, I think Mr. Holmes was first, but that's
Oh,
okay.
I'm sorry.
I think he'll
Ladies
lead
first.
anyway. Okay, thank you. One of the things that I wanted to also bring up, we talk about the community and education and communication. And I'm wondering how many of our community members are aware of the different programs that we have to communicate between police, law enforcement, or understanding law enforcement, what we do, why we do it, and kind of bridge that problem that we have. One of the big programs, and I don't know when the last time we had one, was the Citizens Police Academy. And individuals will go to the Citizens Police Academy and actually learn about our laws, learn about why we do what we do. And many of the members have come out of that academy having a better understanding about the split-second decisions that we have to make, learn about the laws, what we can do, what we can't do, why we make vehicle investigation, pedestrian investigations, and things of that nature. So that is an excellent educational tool for our communities to kind of understand a little bit. I've known several officers before they became officers actually went through that Citizens Police Academy and actually became officers as a result of that. So we're talking about education. That is, there's so many different programs dealing with the youth, dealing with community, that I think community are not aware of. It should be made aware of. We have like the Town Watches, we have the Explorers programs, we have crime prevention officers that come out and actually help community members. But how many community members know about all of these things? So that's important to get those things out into the community so they can kind of understand why police officers do what they do. And it also gives officers to understand why community members do what they do. Dealing with split-second decisions. I had brought some reporters up. We had the firearms training simulator. And they always say, why don't you shoot in the leg? We put them through scenarios and we hosted them with guns and let them go through the scenarios and see what they would do in these particular situations. You'd be surprised how many people kill people, innocent people. And the interesting about it, they came out and said, okay, I have a better understanding. So, you know, being educated and kind of putting people in our position, so to speak, actually helps bridge that gap also. So, you know, I'm a big thing on education and training. I was in for years. And I think that's a big part in actually, you know, bridging the problems that we have with our community also. I'm done.
Let's go with Officer Holt.
Basically, I was when we started talking about social media being good and bad, I wanted to, you know, piggyback on that. Social media is a great tool, a great tool, but a lot of people use it for negative things, which makes it bad. You understand what I'm saying? We could do a lot more as far as policing and getting the community to engage in like a police page where any questions could be answered, or even have a Q&A question to enlighten people on our laws and why we do things certain ways. But also the negative ways of it is how these kids are using it right now. Because I don't know if you guys are familiar with what they call drill rap.
Yep.
This is one of the reasons for the increased gun violence in Philadelphia, because of drill rap. Drill rap was originated in Chicago, and now it's basically countrywide. And now we have certain factions in Philadelphia that are using the internet, social media to make quote unquote rap about different factions and who they killed, and it's just sending our gun numbers and everything else up through the roof. So just like I said, we could the social media could be used for positive things, but right now I see our younger community really using it for the wrong things. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Officer Hickinson.
Just to go back to, I think one of the previous questions was on the topic of the responsibility on the community and the police to kind of try to bridge that gap collectively. Just going back to that conversation, I think, I believe, I don't know her title as of this point, Charlotte Consul was just talking about the different programs that are out there. We have PDAC members. You guys are the Police Advisory Commission, if I'm not mistaken. And that is a totally different concept, I think, that of what goes on the PDAC board. But there are district PDACs, there is the Civilian Police Academy, they're coming up with programs, I feel like daily, in terms of STEM programming and a youth police advisory commission. And these programs are out here, but it is amazing that no one knows about them. We have people that sit on our board, and they don't talk about it. Like, in terms of recruitment, in terms of getting people engaged, in terms of getting people to understand it on an even playing field. I think when we get it on an even playing field, we have better results about a lot of things. I think somebody mentioned in the 19th district, they did a program where they let the youth be the officers and the officers were the youth. We did something similar in the 17th, but it was with adults. And again, they walked away with another perspective. If we can get people, the people that are already participating in these programs, to be more vocal about these programs, I think it would be a better connection. Because a lot of people don't even know what you put a C in front of it. I don't know what the C stood for.
Citizen Police Oversight Commission.
Okay, so before it was just the Police Advisory Commission.
Yes.
And a lot of people didn't know that we already had them until this big social justice movement. And then everybody's like, oh yeah, we need this. But it was like, it was already in place. People, I feel like if people would be genuine in what their motives and messaging is, I think that will help bridge the gap more.
Yeah.
For police to understand the communities, because sometimes you do get officers that come from other places that may never really interacted with their different community members, in terms of maybe they never really interacted with Black people. Maybe they never really interacted with Spanish people. Because in East Division, which is like the 24th, 25th, that's another big gap. They have predominantly Spanish. And when you put certain officers down there that don't understand that gap in terms of language, in terms of just culture, it may cause a divide. But when you get people from that culture to participate in these things, I feel with the officers, because that's the key. A lot of the officers that patrol do not get the same opportunity as a school resource officer, because they renamed them. They don't get the same opportunity as a community relations officer. It's easy to say, get out and communicate and talk, but we legit don't have the manpower for that. Some districts, they running from job to job. They don't have time to sit there and talk with community members all day. That's what they rely on their community relations teams for. So with all these programs that are out there, if the community in and of itself isn't participating and spreading that word to get other people to the table, it just makes it really difficult.
Yeah, Officer Atkinson, you brought up a lot of good points. There's a lot of good things happening in the city that community members may not necessarily be aware of. And PAC, one of the things that we have been doing, we were small, but we have been sort of making it our mission to just educate the public about different police procedures, different policies. We've had, police officers and other members of PPD come and speak at our community meetings about different things. And now that we have grown and we are going to be transitioning to CPOC, we are really going to be sort of ramping up our community outreach and constituent services. And that's going to involve really being able to, share and highlight some of the programs that you mentioned. And so that's why, nights like tonight are really important, so that we can get to meet you, get to expose PAC and CPOC to other members of the community, and really let, everyone know that we are still here. We've been here, we've been putting in the work, but we are really looking forward to being able to do some more things in a bigger way now that we've expanded and we have more staff. And we were just talking about the Civilian Police Academy today. So it's just funny that that came up. You know, we were discussing it at work today. So
I will be attending. So
just so you guys know, we still do the Civilian Police Academy. We just had a class graduate, I believe, the end of last year.
It's actually, there's a new one we were talking about at our staff. For anyone who's on the call and interested, please feel free to reach out to the PAC and we can direct you on how to apply for it. But the next, I think the application is due by March 2nd and the next class starts at the beginning of April.
Yeah, so it hasn't went away. It's still here, it's still around. So just so you guys know.
Inspector Francis, I think, had something to comment as well.
No, it was covered. Thank you so much.
Great.
So I know we've kind of run out of time, but there's one more question that I'd like to pose to the panel. If anyone wants to answer, please feel free. And, you know, I know we're past time, so if some people have to jump off, you know, I'll say it now. Thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate, you being involved and you being here tonight. I know that your time is valuable, but we really believe this is a very important conversation to have. And hopefully in the future, we can have more conversations just like this, because I can speak for myself. I've learned a lot of things and seen a different perspective than I've seen from police officers and other law enforcement officials up until this point in my life. So I'm very grateful for having this time to really talk about some of these things. But the last question that I want to pose to everyone is, do you believe that, you know, some of your colleagues, especially colleagues that are maybe from a different cultural background or from a different community than you are, do you think they genuinely understand the divide between some communities, especially communities of color, and the police force? And if so, you know, can you expand on that a little bit?
You're unmuted, Deborah.
I believe that, yes, there are some officers who do understand that there is a divide and they get it. But I also know that there are some who don't. They don't believe that there is one. And the reason being is because you have cultural differences and you have traditions that have been ingrained in people in the law enforcement community. And I think the only way, and this is where Lieutenant Burks was talking about being transparent, being upfront with information. You have to actually, like, these forums are good, but when we don't have it where we have the right people in the room, and when you have these trainings, implicit bias, that's just protocol, just getting through it. But for people to really understand what's going on, ask them if they want to switch places and be in your place. Because nobody wants to be in our place. Nobody wants to be treated the way we've been treated. I know there was a study one time by, I don't remember, but Deputy Charlotte Council may remember, but I remember it was a study by a teacher, a school teacher in the 60s, where she made a study in regards to making, there were a group of kids, they were all white kids. Some of them had blue eyes and some of them had brown eyes. And what she did was she made the people who had blue eyes thinking at first that they were better than the people with the brown eyes, and that the brown eyed people weren't as smart and they didn't deserve everything, and so they were treated poorly. Then she switched the roles. So when she switched the roles, the blue eye, the students didn't appreciate it. I'm not going to go into it, but you can look it up on YouTube. It's on YouTube. But it's a great study. And sometimes when you actually put people in those type of environments, they will get it. I remember seeing a YouTube video where it was a female officer who had a meltdown because she went through the McDonald's drive-through and she was in uniform. Her meal was a little late. I don't know what the whole situation, but the way she was talking about it, she was like, well, everybody hates us. And, you know, and she felt all discombobulated and all this. And my comment was like, you could go home and take off that uniform, but I can't go home and take off my skin. I can't change who I am. So I'm treated like that all the time. So if I go to the restaurant, I got to pray over my food that the hands that prepared my food didn't do anything crazy to my food. Where she can go into the restaurant and be cool and don't have no worries about who prepared her food or how she's going to be treated. you know, these are the things that sometimes have to be out there. You have to say it. It's uncomfortable, but it's the truth. And a lot of times people just don't want to be uncomfortable, like Walter said, but I'm sorry, you got to get uncomfortable, because there's a whole lot of people who have been uncomfortable for a long time, and it's now time for us to address this so that we can move on and be better. But we are not going to get better because we have people who believe that we are second-class citizens. If you look at the Ferguson's report, the officers believed that their community were just people of, they were second class. They were not, they shouldn't have been treated equally. So we have a lot of officers who believe that, but the only way to address it is to call it out, say what it is, and then let's move on, because we are never going to move on if we don't call it out and say what's going on. And we just want to keep putting a Band-Aid on it and covering it up. We're never going to get anywhere. So sometimes you got to have that voice, somebody that can come out and say, listen, this is what I see. This is wrong. We are not doing things the right way. We need to change what we do. No, you're not going to just go in and just keep doing these deployment strategies in a community and not take into account of the collateral damage that you're causing to the good law-abiding people, because you're trying to get the little few that is doing something. You got to take account for that and try to make it better. But we won't do that if we don't have those uncomfortable conversations and be upfront, be real, transparent. We can say those words, they sound good in meetings, but if you don't mean it and you're not doing it, it doesn't mean anything. That's my comment.
Would anyone else, there we go, Officer Burks. Or Lieutenant Burks, excuse me.
It's fine. It's fine. I just have to say that I do think that we have some officers that may be uncomfortable working in certain situations. And I'm not going to just say that, you know, it's maybe just because, like I believe Officer Hickinson said it before. Some people, they never experienced, you know, certain types of people or certain cultures. You know, if you're born and raised in certain neighborhoods and you weren't ever exposed to certain cultures, then when it is going to be sort of a culture shock when you're placed in a district where you're used to being, let's just say in an all-white neighborhood, or let's say a white affluent neighborhood, and then you're placed in a neighborhood that's predominantly African American, and they're not affluent. You know what I mean? I think the city of Philadelphia is like, they call it the city of neighborhoods, right? So we got a bunch of different neighborhoods. And one of the sad things about our neighborhoods is that we are divided by class and wealth. We are. And one of the things I tell the recruits up there when we're training, I said, listen, you would go into a place like, say, the 14th district, right? And you got Chestnut Hill, and you got $1 million homes, and you got important people and politicians and judges and lawyers. And then you go to Brickyard, and it's a different story. But I always tell the recruits, like, listen, you got to treat the people in Brickyard the same way you treat the people in Chestnut Hill. Because see, there is no difference. You have to treat people with respect and dignity. And you have to be, you have to treat people like human beings, the way you would want your family members to be treated. And I do have a unique position up at the academy right now. I always wanted to be there. I'm glad to be there because I do see my purpose being fulfilled on this job. But there's only one aspect of it, right? And then when you get to, the way people were born and raised, for me, I know that some people, they just don't get it. They just don't get it. But that's where I have to take the opportunity to try to explain it to them, like, yo, listen, that's not the way we do things, And someone brought up fear earlier. Fear, a lot of these shootings and things that happen is a result of fear. It's a result of not knowing how to deal with certain individuals. And Officer Hickinson said it again. I mean, in the 24th district, the 25th district, the 26th district, predominantly Hispanic, they do things differently than people in, the 17th or people in the 12th district. So we all have to have an open mind, right? We can't go in one neighborhood and think that, it's a term, ethnocentrism, right? When you think that your culture is superior than others, or you're superior to others. And we have to make sure that we're cognizant of the fact that people are different. People have a right to be different. People, you got different, sexual orientations, you got different races, you have to understand that people have a right to be different. But if you treat all people the same, no matter what, and that's with respect, with dignity. That's, you know, you're sticking true to the you know, your morals and your ethics. When you start to treat people the same based on those things, and there's no reason for someone to call you a racist or say that you have a bias. It's just, but that starts from within you. And, you know, so to answer the question, to go back to what the original question was, I do think some people do feel uncomfortable in certain situations. It doesn't all the time mean that they're a racist individual or, you know, prejudice against a certain people. It's just that they haven't had as much exposure. But, you know, when they get that exposure, they have to know how to deal with people from other cultures. And I mean, we see it again. We see it. We you know, it's worth talking about it. But, you know, we got to get to the right people and have these conversations with the right people so that we can make a difference. I agree wholeheartedly with Staff Inspector Francis said, because we can talk about this stuff all day, but if the people that need to hear it ain't hearing it, it's not going to be effective.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Officer Holmes. I'm still muted.
I was just clapping because it made a lot of sense. Just clapping.
Okay. Well, we are 17 minutes past where we were supposed to end. So, I mean, unless Talia or Danny or anyone else on the team wants to do the closing remarks, or I think actually our executive director, Anthony Arachi, is going to do our closing remarks.
I'll just add while I unmute Anthony that I put in the chat for anybody. If you're not already on our mailing list, please feel free to join.
Since we are so far over, I will keep it extraordinarily brief and just thank Julian, Talia, and Danny for running a great show tonight. And thank you very much to the panelists. This is hopefully the first of many conversations, and I hope we can keep the spirit of this going, not just in February, but all year. And you'll be hearing a lot from us in the coming months. So everybody take care of each other and have a great night. And thank you for coming.
Everybody.
Thank you so much to all our panelists. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.